everything has sugar in it.
It does.
And then what is processed food?
All right, don't try to play me and talk about sugars and everything.
It
because
is in everything.
It is good and bad sugars. Okay?
Well, explain that.
Like
Explain
the
that.
corn syrups, we don't want that. The added
High
sugar.
fructose.
Yes, we don't
I
want
love
those.
fructose.
We don't want that.
I put fructose on everything.
We don't. And you wonder why you got ADHD and all these fancy diagnoses. Stop it. Don't do it.
It's an honor, privilege, and a pleasure to be joined by you once again on Counsel Culture, a brave place and a safe space to have important conversations within our community. And have you ever had the gut feeling that you need to get your shit together? Well, we got the gut detective. Yes, the one and only Dr. Ebony Cornish, who's gonna tell us how to get our gut right. Let's get it. Once again, we are back right here at Counsel Culture, a safe space and a brave place to have discussions that are needed within our community, where I'm literally in a master class, a one-on-one session with my actual doctor. She is back for our second session. The gut detective is what they call her, Dr. Ebony Cornish. Dr. Cornish, thank you for being with us here again. It's an honor.
Thank you for having me back.
No doubt. Well, I mean, you blew everybody's mind in our first session with all the things that what gut health actually was. And towards the end of the session, we were talking about mental health and how, the gut is connected to the brain and how they almost say sometimes the gut is the second brain.
Oh, yeah.
And but to clear that up and clarify, because I want to touch on mental health in a big way, that there's studies that autism is connected to the gut. I mean, I have a son that is autistic. ADHD. Dr. Amen diagnosed me with ADHD. I've been, having ADHD since I was a kid. But through this process, through working with you, I've learned that a lot of that is connected to my gut as well. And, how inflammation of the gut actually affects inflammation of the mind. And that's a serious thing because, the mind is a terrible thing to waste. Like, we don't function if our mind's not functioning.
Yeah.
And it all starts with the gut. So let's jump right into that. Mental health and the gut. And you told us last session how they were connected, but how can we put the correct things in our gut so we can have the best mental health?
So what I tell patients is, and it sounds like easier said than done, right? Because I never really like the term mental health. I like the term brain health.
Okay.
Because your mood can be affected and your focus by so many things. Now, as it relates to what you're putting in your body, you think about, is it good for my brain?
Mm-hmm.
Because your brain affects your mental health.
Right.
So what I tell people are the simple things. All right, listen. Stop with that sugar. I know it's hard.
She's cussing at me again,
Stop with the sugar.
It's a cuss word.
But no, honestly, when I have patients remove sugar, and even personally, right?
Right.
My kids, 3 of them.
Right. You got triplets, Doc.
Triplets. But when they have sugar, because they rarely do. When
They
grandma,
turn up.
They turn up. It is a fight. It is a war. I'm looking at them like, who are these kids? Let me drop them off at somebody's house or take them somewhere because I don't know who they are. But when they don't, and I can tell when somebody gave them something.
The sugar demons.
Man, it is a demon. But when they don't, they're nice and calm. And that's why when I see parents and they're telling me, they want to put or even adults, a stimulant to focus or mood medication, I say, wait, let's first start by changing your diet. Let's start by removing the sugar and getting the inflammation down. Let's see how you focus. Do it for a week because it's hard to do.
So what about the people who are cramming and when they're studying and they're like, I just need a sugar, I need a Snicker, it satisfies me, keep me going.
Mm-hmm.
I just need some coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of these things that they think are helping them in their process to focus at work or to get them through the night or the day. Sugar helps.
So reach for kombucha. Reach for kefir. Some of them fermented foods, they give you that same rush and that same high because they're calming inflammation. And that was my thing. I used to be
kombucha, like calms it?
Yeah, because it gives you prebiotics. That's something fancy. It feeds all the good bacteria in your gut. It's fermented.
Right.
So that good bacteria gets hyped and excited, and then your brain starts working better.
See, I feel like I'm drinking kombucha, I'm drinking vinegar. Like, I feel like
it's fermented, yes. But, I mean, it gives you good help for those good bacteria. And I told you, it's a war between the bad bacteria that does the bad stuff and the inflammation and the good ones.
Right.
We want to feed the good ones so that our brain works better. That's why I said brain health is mental health. And what we do when my patients come in and they're like, I'm depressed, and they've worked with a psychiatrist, because I'm an MD, I'm a functional medicine doctor.
Right.
So I'm not psychiatry, but I look at that root cause.
Right.
So they're depressed,
right.
or they have ADHD, or they have schizophrenia, or bipolar, all these terms that have been provided by other doctors.
Right.
Cut the sugar out, take a break from the processed foods. Let me see you in a couple months or even 30 days.
Wow.
And let's see how you feel. I'm going to tell you will feel better. And people get so frustrated. Like, I tried it and I don't feel better. Well, what else are you doing? Are you just trying that, or do you have the lifestyle part as well? But
right.
I'm telling you, once you get that good bacteria flowing, it's going to shut down that inflammation and you will notice a difference. Even
and
in
start
your poop.
with, so if anybody, because obviously everybody doesn't have access to a Dr. Cornish, but if you say, if something, you feel like something's going wrong mentally,
yes,
let's start with removing sugar from the diet.
Let's start by removing sugar and removing things that are processed and fast food.
So let's dig a little deeper on that, Doc, because one, I tried this. Everything has sugar in it.
It does.
Like from ketchup to like everything, there's sugar. Like if you look on the back, it's gonna be some sugar added for the normal stuff, unless you're going sugar free. And then that got all these weird chemicals in it that I don't even know if that's good that I'm putting into my body. So to remove sugar, like I can stop eating candy, I can stop eating cookies, I can stop putting syrup on my pancakes, and but everything has sugar. So one, how do I remove something that's in everything? And then two, because even fruit has sugar in it. But then that leads me to the question of, we keep talking about processed food. I think we need to clarify what is a processed food, because when I think processed food, I think fast food, I think stuff in the grocery store, but just for the people who don't really know exactly what to cut out, how can I cut out sugar when sugar has everything? And then what is processed food?
All right, don't try to play me and talk about sugars and everything.
It is in everything.
It is good and bad sugars. Okay?
Well, explain that.
Like
explain
the
that.
corn syrups, we don't want that. The added
High
sugar.
fructose.
Yes, we don't
I
want
love
those.
fructose.
We don't want that.
I put fructose on everything.
We don't want
I put
it.
fructose on toast.
And it's addictive. And you wonder why you got ADHD and all these fancy diagnoses. Stop it. Don't do it. Because
it's so delicious.
I know. But sometimes it's not as much as what you don't eat as what you do eat. Okay. So trying to find alternatives. That's why I say the whole foods. Try to find the whole fruits. Find the brown rice. Find the, the vegetables that you can eat. The protein. Try to shift to the whole food.
If I'm thinking, because I like sweet stuff, so I can have the sugar that's in fruit?
Yes.
So I can eat all the fruit I want?
Yes.
Okay.
You can eat all the fruit you want.
So nothing that has high fructose. What was the other thing you said?
So corn syrup, high fructose,
so if it has
sucrose, added sugars. We're talking about the refined sugars. When you're looking at that box of cereal, agave is okay, but cane sugar, you can do agave. I'm okay with that.
Honey,
I can let you do honey.
Manuka.
You can do manuka.
There it is.
You can do it.
All right.
I got you.
Yeah,
but you're not gonna eat.
Tea.
Yeah,
I'm
get rid of the candy machine.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But no, honestly, when you're looking at things and you see, I like manuka, I like stevia, but if you're seeing
stevia, even though the chemicals and
it's a little better because it's plant based.
Okay.
NutraSweet and all that equal.
Leave that alone.
Leave that alone. But if you gotta need some people just need something. And you're feeding that bad stuff. That's because they need it. The bad organism in your gut need it, not you. Yeah. Because it's connected to the brain. It's an addiction.
It is definitely an addiction.
It's an addiction.
I am addicted to sugar.
It's acting on the opioid receptor.
Right.
Same receptors as heroin.
Right. Yep. I'm on the smack.
And kids too, right? Kids too. So
my veins is popping.
Exactly. So you be looking at something, the first thing you see in Lucky Charms is, cane sugar.
Right.
Come on, put that down. Or you seeing something, you're seeing 10 grams, 20 grams of sugar in something.
But they didn't cane sugar used to be considered a medicine back in the day.
Back in the day, but they didn't have all those other toxins, we have going on with our gut back in the day.
Got
We're
it.
in a way more toxic society with the food we have and that standard American diet. That's why I call it the sad diet. Because of
Standard
all the
American
bad
diet is a
things they
sad
do
diet.
to our gut and our
Yeah.
inflammation. So sure, at one time, hey, it might have been fine. But right now, it's all hands on deck.
Right.
Because the things that we have out there, a lot of it is poisoning us.
Right.
And we just got to find a balance. It's not as hard as people think.
Right.
But then other things you can do is once you start feeding that good bacteria what it needs to thrive, it starts crowding out the things that are craving, the yeast,
Right.
the bad bacteria. They start getting crowded out. You get more good than bad. And that also decreases your cravings.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so get rid of the sugar, even though I think sugar's in everything, but now get rid of the refined
Fine sugar, yes.
the fructose, the corn syrup. All right, I'm gonna try that. And then processed foods. What is a process? Like when we hear that, what are they actually doing, and why are these foods processed?
So we're going to get in trouble talking about processed foods. So let's make it simple. But what's happening is they're adding things to the crops,
Right.
you know, to make them last
longer, right?
Yep, to last
so
longer.
So when they're adding it, it's not for us.
No.
It's not healthy for us.
No.
It's just it's really so it's a monetary thing.
Exactly.
To make more money.
Modified.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Make more money. So you're getting things like GMOs, which we know.
What is that? I hear that a lot.
Yeah, it's generally modified.
Yeah, because I see the stuff that says no GMOs on the.
Cut that part out. Blank. I got a blank here. Cut that part out. But yeah.
Yeah. No, but that's the.
Yeah.
So things that don't have anything genetically modified.
Genetically modified.
Does that connect to organic? So if I see something that says organic, does that mean it's not processed?
Yeah, that's what the goal is for something. So you don't want anything that's modified, right? So when you go organic, that's supposed to be free of, added derivatives and added processed foods. So you just look at the labels. And one thing I tell patients is, look, it's not, all this is not that hard. You don't have to be super wealthy to eat healthy. They got steamable vegetables at the store. They got, foods that are not processed. They got frozen things on sale. We talked earlier about looking at the store brand. But if you look at the back of whatever you're purchasing and you see words you can't pronounce, it's probably something you shouldn't get.
Right.
You try to eat whole foods. If you're seeing these words on there and it's like 60 of them
right,
on the back of whatever package you're looking at when it goes on the ingredients,
that's the process.
That's the process part of it. So you want to concentrate on the whole stuff.
So going to places like your farmer's market.
Exactly.
Going to your local gardens.
Exactly.
Eating from there is going to be way more healthier for your gut and for your body in total.
And even, because some people think you got to go to the expensive grocery stores. I used to go, way back in school, I would go to the Asian market, and even still now.
Yeah.
But you can get the cheap fruit. You can get the cheap lettuce, and they're everywhere. All you got to do is Google most Asian markets. They have all these whole foods that are 75% cheaper than what you can find at your local grocery store.
Wow. So, okay, because let's take it all the way back to brain health. Because I have learned that, my sugar intake is definitely affecting my mind. And it can slow us down. It can make us foggy, which I hear. Tell me more like this fogginess. And then even, is it correlated with mold too? Because I know when I got my brain scanned and, I was told I had brain damage and a lot of toxicity in the brain. It was inflammation that was causing the fogginess, but there was mold that was found too. How does that happen, and how does that affect our minds? And how do you discover that?
Look, you must not have had sugar because you are on it today. Maybe not this morning.
I told you.
It's working. No, but honestly, when we talk about inflammation, just think of a fire, right?
Okay.
Or when you first cut yourself, it's real red, then it heals.
Right.
That's what inflammation is. It's a big old fire that's already brewing in our bodies and in our brain.
Inflammation.
Exactly.
The flame.
It's fire. It's flame.
Okay.
So think about it like that. And you don't want that in your brain. So what happens, there are certain things that can be exposed to, and that's going to make your brain inflame. So may that be some of the things you mentioned, like let's start with environment. Most people don't know that black mold that you get from a water damaged building. You might have had a basement that flooded. You might have a dirty, funky dishwasher machine.
Right.
You may have mold all over your, in your bathroom.
In your car.
In your car.
If rainwater gets inside your car,
exactly.
and you don't clean it properly, it can create black mold.
Or you're going to musty, basements.
Yeah.
Those are all
We know what that
signs.
smell like.
You know they're musty and your clothes smell musty.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't even know that. You might be oblivious.
Right.
But the problem is some people go into that moldy, musty area.
And because I hear black mold can kill you.
It can.
How? How can the mustiness in the clothes, in the car, in the basement actually kill me?
So listen, because it goes and damages your brain and causes that inflammation again. So you're not thinking clearly. So they even show that people who have mold toxicity, they have higher risk of depression, bipolar, because it messes with your brain and your body's ability to produce those, what we call neurotransmitters that keep your brain stable, that keep your mood stable. It also, they had this study and it was so amazing, where they looked at people who had Alzheimer's. And I know this was my family. I was like, ooh, because my mother and my grandmother had dementia and Alzheimer's, and we had a moldy basement.
Right.
They found these people, they could diagnose them in this study with Alzheimer's.
Right.
And they did their test, and they actually had mold toxicity.
Wow.
They did not have the plaques.
So they didn't have dementia. It was just the toxicity.
It was mold and toxicity from mold.
And anybody at any age can get mold, and it can get in their brains. And like I said, it was found in my brain, and one wouldn't know it, but that could cause the fogginess. That can cause you to forget things, the lack of focus, and hopefully I'm cleaning it and getting it all together now through the process. One, how do you find out that you've been exposed to mold? And then two, once you do know that you have mold in your system, how do you get it out?
So, and that's a good point. So usually there are certain tests that you can do. Okay. But I ask, that show for mold, like you did the test. So
you said you found mold in your car, right?
Yeah, I found it in my car. I was like, really? So for people, because not everybody who's in that musty basement is going to have brain inflammation. Right. It depends on your genes. Some people are fine. They go in that musty basement, their brain works on and they go home. Right. Some people are in that musty basement or that environment or even your house, and they feel terrible. I remember when I was looking at a house once, this was years ago, I didn't even know what mold meant. And it wasn't musty, but I left and I was like, I don't feel right. I'm kind of slower today. Yeah. And sure enough, that building was full of toxic mold. So you can get it in your urine, but you also can ask common sense questions. You don't need to get fancy for a test, which is good, but you can ask, hey, do you feel different in a certain environment? Are you going home and can't function and super tired, or going to work? Because a lot of people can have it at their jobs, especially teachers. I see a lot of moldy schools.
Let's say, the mold in school. They say that's one of the major places that is found, because these are old schools that their plumbing isn't up to date, the rain, all that stuff, and then it just slowly builds up.
Yep, and then you go back to work or back to school or go back to that building, and your brain isn't functioning, or you're feeling like your cognition is off in that fog where you're just not quite there. You can't retain like you used to. And sometimes you can even have physical symptoms. Mold can cause joint pain. Wow. It can cause muscle pain. So it's not just all neurologic, it's systemic symptoms. And I find that all the time in their environment. So I ask people all the time, do you feel the same in all your environments, especially if they travel, people who live on the water? I'm always asking them about, water homes or schools, colleges, college campus, because you'll find it. And even when you go to visit other people, it might not. And I never forget, I had a patient. She told me, Doc, I'm perfect now. My brain fog is back. I cleared that mold. But she also had got divorced and moved. So I was like, it might not have been that man. It might have been that, environment that you were breathing that mold in every day. Right. And you change your location.
So once you find out that you do have mold or you've been exposed to mold, how do you get rid of it?
So first, you want to make sure you're not breathing it in. So if you've got mold in your system, you've done the test, and you find that your mold levels are high, and that correlates to how you're feeling, right? Then you got to test your house. And I don't mean having to get $1 million inspection. There are tests where you can get kits that I tell patients to do, things like ERMI tests, and things you can put, and they can be a plate And you can grow mold on it and
wow.
see if it's there and send it to a company, see if it's toxic or not. And that might be like $30, $40 a plate or up to $300 the maximum plate,
Okay.
just to see if it's in that environment. Because
Right.
that's the first thing. Because you can try to treat, but if you're breathing it in, it's like a dog chasing its tail.
Right.
You're breathing it in, but you know it's there.
Right.
And then if you do have it in your system, depending on what it is, you have treatments for it. You have natural things you can do.
You gave me some stuff to get rid of my mold, and I feel like it's worked because I do feel different from not as foggy.
Yeah.
I had for a while, I was losing my voice constantly, and you told me there was like yeast buildup and my vocal cords was being strained, and I thought it was just from the lack of sleep, which that probably added to it. But finding out that there was probably the mold exposure that was creating it. I don't have it anymore, and it's like, so I feel like since we've been working together, we definitely, got rid of the mold. I've been getting my gut together, and I can be honest, like I feel a lot clearer. But one thing that was really interesting during this journey that kind of hit home for me as a father, and specifically as a father of a child that was diagnosed with autism, the connection to your gut and autism. Is this a newfound study, and what is the reality of it? Because that's one of the things that as a parent, you're always trying to figure out, well, how did this happen? Could I have prevented it? Are there certain things that I can do, to build an environment that my children aren't exposed to these things, or that, we can help with the diagnosis of, the current autism?
Yeah. And we actually don't have a cure or this is autism. What we know now, because the rates are 3 to 4 times higher than it was even 20 years ago.
Right.
I have so many kids getting that diagnosis, but we know it's due to toxic burden in our environment, in our foods, in our gut, in our brain. And whenever I treat a child with autism, that's kind of what I do. Like the workup you had, because I have to look for what else might be causing inflammation. Because when your brain isn't functioning properly, you know that that's what's happening.
It's inflamed.
Yes. So what's that root cause? That's what you got to ask yourself. So in my autism population, or children who have autism, what I always do is I look first at the gut.
Right.
Primarily, because what I find is there's higher levels of parasites, higher levels of really bad bacteria, one of which is Clostridium in the gut, and a very, very tiny amount of the good bacteria for your brain.
Right.
And this is a fancy word called bifidobacterium. Now, that's a good bacteria.
Bifidobacteria?
It is great. So if you ever see something like a probiotic or something with bifidobacterium, man, that gives the good bacteria what it needs, and it goes to the brain.
Okay.
So a lot of kids with autism, they're low on that. And their guts are leaky, okay? Because it's a lot of restrictions in diet. So I know a lot of my parents, their kids will only eat those nuggets and that sugar to calm them down, but it's doing more harm than good. So I think the rates are higher in our generation than ever before because of all these millions of toxins, and some of which of the toxins are new that we didn't have in the past. So it's really important. For example, if your child is on the spectrum, don't just accept it and say, oh yeah, my child's on the spectrum. Find out if there are other things outside of genetics, like toxins, contributing to it. From diet, infections is huge. I treat a lot of people who have Lyme disease and co-infections and other chronic viruses. We're seeing a lot of long COVID and autism, checking kids, their levels and the COVID levels for their proteins is through the roof. Yeast.
Right.
I told you yeast is a beast.
Yeah.
You see a lot of kids in that community with high yeast overgrowth, and it could be due to damaged gut or from sugar. So it's about looking at the root cause. And diet and gut, because it's connected to every other cells in the body, is where I start. And also looking at the brain. And like you said, they are connected. But that's why, in my opinion, the rates are so much higher. And when we look at brain scans at Amen Clinic with kids who might be on the spectrum, we definitely see more inflammation, more evidence of things like ADHD or ADD and being unable to focus.
Right.
More evidence of toxicity from on the scans due to the toxins we're exposed to.
Right.
So, during pregnancy, it's important to be as optimal as possible, right? Which is sometimes hard.
Right.
But we know that stress changes DNA of the fetus.
Really?
Yeah.
I hear about it. So that's a real thing.
It's true. Lack of exercise.
Okay.
Changes the DNA of the fetus. Okay, because that's just like having stress, and even with your kids, having them more active in yourself.
Right.
And processed toxins like heavy metals and bacteria and some viruses and parasites, some of them, they're being published to cross over into that fetus. So when you're pregnant or even preparing to be pregnant, you got to try to be as optimal as possible, especially as it relates to the diet, and to your gut health. Because that was like a big thing. When we found out triplets, I was like, oh my God, what are we having?
Yeah.
But then I was like, let me get on my probiotics because I got three souls coming in this world. Let me make sure I cut out all the processed foods. For my husband, he was at the hospital because I was on bed rest making like smoothies with like almond butter and almonds and greens and almond, just kind of making like a high protein smoothie. I was eating whole foods because it's scary.
Right.
You're bringing another life into the world, and it's so much that people are at risk for.
Right.
And especially now, people are so quick to diagnose.
Yeah.
But it's such a more common process disease-wise now because of the higher levels of toxins that we get exposed to. And we get exposed to many more down the line.
And so, I mean, obviously, because we talk about, whether it's being on the spectrum, whether it's ADHD, just knowing how the gut is truly connected to the mind. Your advice to the average everyday person who, whether it's their child, whether it's themselves, creating that environment, other than now, because we talked about all of the things that we can ingest, but once getting yourself to the healthiest space for your gut and for your mind, for the everyday person, what are a few steps that we should follow?
So basic steps for your gut. Don't forget about exercise too.
Okay.
And also find out ways to decrease the stress, because both of those things, lack of exercise and stress, cause leaky gut as well. Okay?
And then what is leaky gut?
All right. So leaky gut means because your gut lining protects you from that bad bacteria that you produce, like in poop. That's why poop stinks.
Right.
You don't want those poop toxins, the stool toxins, to come out your gut. So you have a nice barrier that's naturally created if you treat your gut right.
Right.
But if you get toxic foods and high sugar and processed foods, that barrier opens up.
So it eats at the gut lining?
At the gut lining. And more importantly, the good bacteria that supports that gut lining, they don't function as well because it's too much bad bacteria. And so when that gut lining is destroyed or leaky, that's when you get the problems.
Shit's popping off.
It is. The toxins. The toxins are going everywhere. That's when you're getting inflammation. That's when it's really bad, because things that don't need to be in your body are going everywhere else. They're causing inflammation to your hormones, to your brain, to your neurotransmitters that stabilize your mood. Just because you open the window, you open that level, and all those bad things are leaking out and causing systemic inflammation and affecting every other organ.
So literally your gut can affect your mood.
Yes.
If you start eating better, you'll feel better, and then you'll actually operate better throughout the day.
Exactly.
So if something is so simple, why don't we do that as a community?
Because we think it's hard. And a lot of times we don't have access.
Right.
Is being unaware, because in our environment,
access to this information.
Yeah. And in this environment, we might not have access to those markets that have discounted produce. And healthy food is expensive.
Yeah. How much fruit should one eat a day?
I would say at least 3 servings.
3 servings of fruit?
I would like every meal you have to have at least a fruit and a vegetable with it.
All right. So 3 servings of vegetables as well?
Yep.
No gluten.
Try to avoid that gluten, the processed.
No sugar.
Yep. I know people are like, really?
I mean,
doctor?
But so, because people are mostly thinking that that's all effective, like with your weight or your physical health. But this is also more about your mind, your brain, and your mental health, about putting the right things in your body.
And I'm glad you mentioned weight, because they also look at people who have extra weight or have higher risk of diabetes, and they look at their guts, and there are certain good bacteria in their guts that's missing because they have too much bad bacteria and inflammation, and their metabolism is all off.
Right.
And then another thing, food restricted eating. So let's say you're doing intermittent fasting. I usually tell
Yeah, break that down, because I always hear about the immediate fasting and intervention and intervention. Like, what is first of all, how do you say it correctly?
All right.
And then what is that?
All right, it's intermittent fasting.
Intermittent.
Yep.
So all y'all that think y'all know what y'all talking about is intermittent. It's not intermediate. It's intermission. Intermittent fasting.
Yes.
And what is the definition of that?
So basically, the easy way to look at it, it's time restricted eating. So there's a period of time that you're not eating. And during that fasting, your body naturally is going to want to preserve the good bacteria that decreases inflammation and purge the bad. That's just our natural that's just how we work. And you want to fast.
It's almost like a circadian rhythm.
It is.
You know what I mean?
It is. So 8 hours,
Yeah.
8-hour eating window is perfect if someone wants to try intermittent fasting. So if your first meal is 9, your last meal is 5, I don't care. So after that 8 hours, no food.
So you only eat for 8 hours.
For an 8-hour window.
And you can choose whatever that 8 hours is.
Whatever it is.
And then after that, you got to fast for, I ain't that good at math, what is the next? 16 hours.
Yep. And that's going to turn all that, sugar and carbohydrates into something called ketones. So that's why people think of the ketogenic diet.
Yeah.
They think, oh yeah, I'm losing weight. No, you're improving your metabolism because you're treating your gut better. You're giving that good bacteria time to flourish, which helps process the fats.
Right.
And those ketones are great for your brain. So you're optimizing your brain health just by only eating 8 hours. So that's something even good that anybody can do. I don't care what food you're eating, 8 hours.
Only eat for 8 hours.
8 hours.
That shouldn't be that hard.
No.
Right.
Either a late breakfast or early dinner.
Right.
8 hours. And after that 8 hours, fluids
Nothing
only.
So
else.
I was about to say, can you drink
water?
Water.
Mm-hmm. Nothing with calories.
And so late night snacking?
No.
No
8
Snickers?
hours.
No. No Flaming Hot Cheetos?
You want brain inflammation?
No.
Okay. Flaming Hot is the worst.
Yeah,
Worst
I've heard
thing.
that's
it's terrible. It is very toxic. I'm sorry, Dorito people, but it is toxic to the brain.
It's Flaming Hot everything now. They got Flaming Hot toothpaste.
And that's MSG.
Oh, man.
Yeah, y'all heard of MSG.
I love spicy
and
stuff.
that makes you excited.
What is MSG? I thought it was Madison Square Garden.
Monosodium glutamate. So it makes you like on fire. So people who eat MSG, they get all hyped up.
Really?
Especially with kids. I mean, think about it. Let's say you go to McDonald's. Your kid goes, you go. Don't you feel a little hyped up after?
Absolutely.
Either that or you're going to be tired.
Yeah.
You're not going to feel normal.
You hyped up for a second and then you get tired.
Yeah, or drinking that sugary soda. You're like, whoa, I got a little, thing going on.
Yeah.
Or you crashing after. That's because you're getting
MSG.
too much glutamate, that MSG.
Right.
And that overstimulates the brain.
Right.
And it makes you more hyperactive. And that's another thing with adults, but especially with kids, because it's back to school season.
Yeah.
Kids are going back to school, and you're like, oh, little Johnny, he has this diagnosis. We're so quick to diagnose kids with ADD, ADHD, on the spectrum. And when they come to my office, the first thing I say is, look, I don't give you a diagnosis. I look at that root cause. Let's see why he's not focusing.
Right.
Let's see why he's not learning the way. And the first thing we do is we start with that gut. And then they'll tell me, oh, they're picky. And I say, do they have a job at 6? They can't buy the groceries. So they're not going to starve. But you can make baby steps. It's hard to just drink.
My baby ain't going to eat that.
Exactly.
My baby don't want that. That's because you giving it to your baby. Now, one thing you touched on in our private sessions that actually struck a major chord with me and actually gave me a different outlook on even any diagnosis. When I told you that I was diagnosed with lupus, and you said, why? And it was like, we just accept the doctor's diagnosis and don't ask the question, oh, well, why do you have ADHD? Or why is your immune system out of whack? It has to be a reason. It just didn't happen that way. And the answer, as you're the detective, the gut detective, you find out those answers to why.
Exactly. Because break down what autoimmune disease is, because we always hear that word. What exactly does that mean?
Right.
Well, that just means that there is something that causes your immune system. Everybody knows what that is, that fights off bugs, fights off infections. So those cells got so mad
Right.
because of inflammation that they forgot what to fight. So instead of fighting all the bad things like the bacteria and viruses, they started fighting you.
Yeah.
They started fighting your kidneys.
Yeah.
Started fighting your muscle. People get eczema. They
Yeah.
start fighting their thyroid. People get thyroid disease. They start fighting off your pancreas. People start getting, diabetes.
An overactive immune system.
Exactly. But it's always
Because
a
you have so
trigger.
much inflammation.
Inflammation. So that's what I look at. Well, what's the cause of inflammation?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you'll get just, you have autoimmune, get out of here, get these drugs, in and out the office in 15 minutes. But when I take a step back, I say, I don't accept that. If you weren't born with it, why in the world would you develop it? And that's when you look at, is it infectious, right? Because a lot of people, autoimmune disease, have chronic viruses or bacteria. Right. Is it diet? Because those immune cells, they're connected to the gut, and the gut, makes them inflame, and it gets angry. So that's all it is. It's your immune system targeting you. So even if you have psoriasis or skin problems, it's all due to inflammation. That's what it is. That's the key.
Inflammation is the demon.
It is.
It's on fire.
Fire.
Well, this has been another informative and amazing session. I learned so much once again. I truly appreciate your time and all the wisdom that you're blessing us with. Like, subscribe, comment, and make sure you join us for the next session with Dr. Ebony Cornish on Counsel Culture.